This was definitely a crash course, special education law and ethics, but the resources provided, including the required textbooks, made this class easier to digest. The first thing that stood out to me was that laws refer to the rules that govern activities in society, and that legal research is the process of finding these laws. The text gave great instruction on how to complete legal research and how to find information. But I think why it really stands out to me is because um, as I'm progressing in my career, I realize that I need to find the laws to do the legal research to find the laws that govern special education. Um, Next, learned about different acts. I had heard about all three of these acts previously, but was able to dive a little deeper. So, in the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, I was able to dive a little deeper into Part B, which emphasizes the importance of procedural safeguards to protect the rights of children with disabilities, ensuring they receive appropriate services and that their parents are actively involved in the education process. The next act was the Americans with Disabilities Education Act. It's important that administrators, counselors, and teachers working with students with disabilities are aware of the content of the ADA because of the law's implications for the lives of students they serve. When students with disabilities leave school and enter the workforce, they will need to engage in self advocacy. A duty of educators is to inform students with disabilities and their parents of the power and promise the ADA gives them and the ways in which that power and promise can be productively used. In this class, I did create an academic poster on the 5 titles of the ADA that I hope to share with my future students. The next act was the Every Student Succeed Act, which is previously known as No Child Left Behind. And I think the biggest takeaway I took from that was that pre-service teachers require intensive training to prepare them to enter schools knowing and able to use evidence-based instructional strategies and methods to teach and collect meaningful data to monitor students' progress. And those are two things that I feel like I've um, been trained on through this institution. The next um, The next part that I was able to dive a little deeper in was the FAPE and IEP. As a special educator, I can apply the fundamental principles from FAPE, free and appropriate public education, litigation, and legislation by actively involving parents in the IEP process, ensuring thorough training for myself and staff on IDA requirements, and developing strong and legally sound IEPs based on comprehensive assessments and ambitious goals. The IEP is essentially the blueprint of the student's FAPE. That was something that really stood out to me in this class, and how important the IEP is to ensure that a student is receiving a FAPE, a free appropriate public education. So I will strive to ensure that IEPs are fully implemented by ensuring all staff understand and fulfill their roles. And in the textbook, it has um, table or like a figure that is a print off that you can give to other staff. General education teachers is who I think I would give it to, but it basically, as the special education teacher, you're making them aware of their students' goals and their role in the IEP, and you have them sign it. So I think I'm going to use that in my future career. And then I was also able to dive a little deeper into the least restrictive environment. One thing that stood out to me was the 3 major placement errors that IEP teams need to avoid. And they are: placement decisions should not be based solely on factors unrelated to the student's needs. So these decisions need to be related to the student's needs. A student's placement must not be predetermined, and an IEP team should not determine a student's placement before developing his or her IEP. And that the IEP should not be finalized when you go into the IEP meeting, but it should be created during the IEP meeting. those were big things that stood out to me, to make sure that you are compliant with special education law. And then lastly, I think one of my favorite parts about this class was the case studies. Using case studies is great for learning about professional studies because talking about real life examples is the best way to understand the issues and practice the skills needed to make good ethical choices. When I was able to dive into Lily Brown's case, I was able to understand due process a little more. And when diving into Isabel's case, it reminded me of how important confidentiality is. And those are just two of the cases that I can recall, that by reading that real life scenario, I was able to connect with it on a deeper level. So I plan in my future to read more real life case studies because I feel like that's one way that I'm able to understand and digest the information that I'm being given. Thank you, Dr. Ulabadi, for this class. And it really was a crash course, but really has pushed, given me a better understanding of special education law and ethics.